to you today about relationship and specifically empathy in relating to your children. So I'm a play therapist. I work with children as young as 3. And as part of play therapy training, we study different approaches of helpful relationships in terms of counseling and psychotherapy. And there was a person that very influential in the field that you probably haven't heard of, but he was one of the first people to really put relationship under a microscope. A guy named Carl Rogers in the 30s and 40s, and he actually studied these certain principles that make a relationship helpful and growth promoting. And in doing that, he kind of uncovered certain core conditions that make a relationship healthy and facilitating growth and even healing in the context of psychotherapy, but even just in a parent-child relationship, principles that are really universal to help facilitate connection, but also help children, in this case children, thrive and grow. Those core conditions, just from a high level, are accurate empathy, is number 1. Number 2, unconditional positive regard. And number 3, congruence or authenticity. And we're going to talk today about this idea of empathy. And empathy is really just getting in the shoes of someone else, of feeling what it's like to be them. And it's such a vital part of not just for a relationship to go well, but also to help facilitate in children emotion regulation. And when there is more emotion regulation in a child, their capacity to make more constructive behavior choices is enhanced. So basically, when there's more empathy, when there's more emotion regulation, behavior changes, and children tend to behave in more helpful, more self-enhancing ways. So how do you convey empathy? If we know it's important, how is it conveyed? Today I want to talk about that specifically, and what that is really in the naming of feelings in children. And that's sort of a foundational way of helping children to know what they feel, and as they do that, they're able to put it into words or give it more expression within themselves, whether it's verbalizing it, but also just the experience of you as their parent seeing their experience and seeing their feelings, and you putting words to it that helps them do that. We talk about the importance of use your words, but children don't inherently know that. That's something that they learn, not really just through their head, but really through experience in their heart and through that relationship with the parent. One of the most powerful and really simple ways of getting that is this concept of just say what you see. So let's say your child comes home, or they get off the bus and they may say, oh gosh, the bus driver yelled at me and everybody laughs. Well, you may be tempted to try to talk them out and say, oh, it's not that big of a deal, or well, did you do this? And that's well intentioned. Again, we say things often based on things we've learned or we've experienced, and but one of the things that I've found helpful is to maybe scrutinize that a little bit, understand, to slow things down to understand what that might be communicating. Because what we don't want to communicate with children is that to tune out of their feelings, or we don't want to minimize it. So instead of that, maybe that comment of, oh, it's not that big of a deal, instead saying what you see, naming what you suspect may be going on with him. Just something like, like I said, they get off the bus, they're saying something like, oh, the bus driver yelled at me and everybody laughed. A phrase maybe like, oh, that must have been really hard for you, or that was upsetting. Again, think about what that says or does to a child, because they may be feeling hurt, disrupted, but to have you as a parent put into words what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, that communicates to them that you see them, and that you see and are really trying to understand what it's like to be them in that moment. There was a study done at UCLA utilizing brain imaging, so MRI technology, the same thing that's used to study our organs and even look for brain tumors and that kind of thing. And they, in a nutshell, showed people pictures of faces that had different expressions on their faces, and then invited them to name the emotion that they saw on their face. And then while this was happening, they were they were scanning their brain using an MRI, and what they found was when they saw the face, the amygdala was very active. The amygdala is the part of the brain that's responsible for fight or flight, meaning where emotional arousal and kind of protective instincts kick in. Every mammal has an amygdala, and then when the person named the feeling that they saw on the person's face, their amygdala actually calmed down and their prefrontal cortex lit up. Scientists believe that's responsible for emotion regulation and self-control. And so, what that really says to me is that when we put feelings into words, our brains literally calm down. We can see that on the MRI, kind of see it under a microscope. And it sort of makes sense, right? That as we put words to what we're experiencing, whether it's naming our own experiences or whether we're helping somebody else put words to that, we feel better. We know it in our gut, and we know it in our whole body that there's a calm that happens, that it's also being understood by somebody else. And again, thankfully, with more brain imaging and sort of putting that under a microscope, we can actually see what's literally happening in the brain. So think about that the next time that your child is experiencing some kind of emotional distress, and that tendency you may have to try to make things better by sharing, like, oh, why don't you do this, or try to talk them out of how they're feeling. Instead, just say what you see, put words to it. There's also a phrase, name it to tame it, in the sense of as we name something, it literally calms our brains down and really our whole bodies. And there's the impact that it has on the child, but also on the relationship, because what that does is it creates a safety between you and your child that lays the foundation for future sharing of emotional upset and difficult experiences. And don't we want that as parents, for our children to be able to, when they're feeling something, to come to us, especially when they get older, and the kind of behavior that we know that older children and teens can get involved in if they are feeling really intense things, they don't know how to deal with them. We want them to be able to come to us. So not only does it benefit your child, help with behavior, but it also enhances the parent-child relationship, which is so vital for their well-being, but also just us enjoying as parents our children into adulthood. So I hope this is helpful for you, and look forward to sharing more tips and parenting approaches with you. Thank you.